want to talk about something we refer to as our issues, personal issues. The day-to-day struggle of human life. Everybody has issues. Everybody thinks their issues are the most complicated and difficult, transcending everybody else's issues. And occasionally you get by. Certain days are good, certain weeks are good, certain periods are easier than others, but there's always something. Some are long-term issues, family issues that go back decades. Some are immediate issues like discord, difficulty with certain people, financial issues, emotional issues. We can go on, and you can fill in your own blanks. And the biggest problem with issues, especially long-standing ones, is that they grab our attention so dramatically and so destabilize us that often they make it difficult to stop long enough and to sit still enough to find a doorway to a place where the issues do not dominate, where you actually can find still space, calm surrender in the middle of your issues. Sometimes that's easier to do than others. And I would probably like to begin this talk by saying no judgment. Some issues are really tough. And some issues are what you might call a life's work. People who have had to deal with tragedy in their early life, who never got beyond that, this is what meditation can help you do. Years and years and years of practice and going deep and deep and deep enough into a place of surrender and letting go. You may actually think at certain points along the way you're getting there, and then out of the blue, those issues rise again. Sometimes the idea of a meditative life to go beyond issues is really a way of hiding from issues. It's really a way of avoiding them. You go into a closet in one part of your psyche to avoid the noise in another part of your psyche. The problem with that is that the issue hasn't gone anywhere. You just happen to have found a quiet corner of the house to live in. But in the larger scheme of things, the goal is to witness the totality of your issues, and beyond that, the totality of your existential truth. To witness who you are beyond all of the collective noise that comes from your DNA, that comes from your family history, that comes from the political, sociological, environmental world that you live in. How do you find a stability that allows you to move through choppy waters or changeable waters, complex, sometimes massive waves of energy, sometimes just gentle rippling at the shore? How do you navigate all of that? The only thing I have to offer, which I offer pretty regularly, is something that I was taught by my teacher, Rudy, which was sit still, find my way into my, if you will, starting with the heart chakra, go inside and discover that there are profoundly still waters in there that are very comforting. They are a place that opens up to something that expands beyond the noise, beyond the issues. It is a space that goes into something that doesn't lock you into a closet of calmness and quietude. It takes you to the place from which calmness and quietude arise originally. It's not unlike what you feel when you go to bed at night. It's not unlike what you feel when you run into the house on a wintry, cold night and the furnace is on and it's comfortable and cozy and you take your coat off and you go, but it's a very big version of that. There is a welcoming space inside us that if you can hang your noisy coat outside, put the umbrella out the door, let go of all of the drama, and just lay it aside and go back home and sit down quietly and relax. Have a cup of tea. That's sort of the spiritual journey, the arrival at a place that is comforting. Now, I think people think that if you're a spiritual teacher and you're a master, not my words, but the idea of master, of spiritual practice, that you have transcended issues. And it may be there are a few spiritual masters out there who have done that. But I just simply want to be deeply honest with you and tell you that I am not one of those people. Blanche and I and our grandchildren and our family have endless issues. And those issues often are just rippling around and we just move along with not too much difficulty. And I must say, my practice has been very valuable. It has really allowed me a certain amount of generalized ease in my life. But in recent times, the issues have gotten really potent. They are both personal and private issues, and they are more global and environmental issues. There's a lot of stuff going on in the atmosphere. All of us are surrounded by it. Some of us are directly in touch with it. Some of us are just keeping it at bay for now. But it's encroaching. The world is encroaching in many ways. And so your personal issues and global societal issues are going to start to merge. And it will become noisier and more difficult to deal with. And all I can tell you is that as a teacher who's been practicing for 50 years, I still get caught in issues. And that if you want to find someone who is beyond that, I would say go find them. I mean, I imagine they're out there. I imagine there are people who are not touched by any of this at all. And as I've said probably in classes before, they're probably not married. They probably don't have children. They probably don't have work beyond teaching. They probably don't have pets that are dying, or they don't have grandparents or parents who need help in the hospital that week, or whatever it is. A lot of people are somehow removed from that. And God bless. If you have all these issues in your life, the great thing is that the practice we do here is a way of asking for help. We use the word to surrender. Partly it means to accept, partly it means to survive. in some way the enormity of upheaval that can happen in your life. So Blanche and I are in a period of upheaval. I've shared it a little bit last week in the talk in San Rafael. Change is afoot in our lives. Where it will go, I don't know. But it has a lot to do with my grandchildren moving away and our desire to either follow them or not follow them, which already is complicated because we are pretty in love with them, maybe even addicted to them. And it means that they may be going far away and we may be going far away. It's a discussion we'll have here more seriously when it actually hits, because we'll have to figure out how to support and sustain what's been offered here for so long. But if we do have to leave here, we'll talk about that as it happens. But that's an element of upheaval and an issue that we are trying to navigate on some level. This past week, I had a minor car accident, pulling into a parking lot, taking my computer to the Apple store. And I won't go into it all, but it was not terrible. I knocked off some mirror on somebody's car. My bad, but it was a blind spot. But I really wondered, why am I having accidents? And what is missing? I thought I was attentive, but I am very aware at my age that I am not attentive in the way that I used to be, and that there are real biological issues at work that happen as you get older. And they are destabilizing on some level, but you also can find that in some level, in some way, you have perspective. You have perspective, and you can watch all this, and you can begin to go, okay, this is process, this is how it works. The same day as the car accident, Blanche had an extraordinarily uncomfortable episode with what's called identity theft. And our computer was compromised. All of our financial information was compromised. All of our passwords for for everything, all of our credit cards, you name it. It was really awful. It continues to happen. We are dealing with it every day. We have been blessed by having people in our lives who can help us. My son Josh, Ann, who's been a helper for years now, is right on top of it. And we are dealing with all of these things really as well as one might. I will tell you, identity theft is a really interesting thing, both as a specific event and a metaphorical event, because in the end, the journey is the loss of identity and everything that that implies. And as those identities are compromised and taken away, who are you? When people have absorbed or taken over parts of your life, you have to protect certain elements of that. But it really does make you say, where is my safety? Where can I not be compromised? Where can all these issues which are erupting, and I will tell you, causing sleepless nights, where do you go? And I was lying in bed the other night after all this was happening, and it was very dramatic, and I couldn't sleep. And I used all of my techniques and everything to lie there and find my way back into quietude, and there was so much noise. And all of a sudden, Nicole Kidman arrived in my brain from a movie that I wrote, and she was talking to her husband. In that movie it was Michael Keaton, in this case it was me, and she said, you know, there's only one place you need to go. And I said, as Michael Keaton did, where's that? And she said, in your heart. So my own little movie came back to talk to me, and I went, of course, of course. So I was lying in bed with a multitude of disturbances, and I just said, of course. And I just stepped inside. The fact that I had forgotten to step inside was a big deal on some level. The fact that I was so distracted by the identity loss and all these things that were happening was very painful. The fact that something I had written and put into the world turned around to talk to me, and it reminded me so clearly what to do. And I just went inside, and it welcomed me instantaneously. And I said, I was so grateful. And I just went in, and I just sat there. And then somehow something passed through the atmosphere about another credit card whose password wasn't changed, and I'm back out in the outer world. And I went, I'm not going to get up now and change a credit card password. I am going to go back in, and I just turned my attention, and I went back into this deep space. And again, I just said, thank you, because this space is so vast, has such a much bigger understanding, if you will, of the world of issues. And it just said, it will take care of itself. Sit quietly, be still. I had to work, literally work, all night to go back into and stay in that space. But if I hadn't had a lifetime of practice, if I hadn't had the blessing of the nourishment of something redirecting me into that space, I would have been stuck in the realm of issues, which is where most of us live. I have to say, getting older brings you more and more into your issues, because in a way you have nothing else. And so you have to learn, if you're lucky, that there is always a counterpoint to that. There is a space you can inhabit that really will take you in, that really will absolve you of all of that noise, and which will become the source of stability, joy, openness, comfort, love, clarity, awareness, all of those things that make it possible to navigate the world of issues. There is, I think, a belief in the spiritual journey that you can rise above all of that. And in some ways, there is truth to that. There comes a point, inevitably, in everyone's life where all of this stuff falls away, where your identity really does fall away, where who you are is no longer who you were, where who you are is this present tense being that doesn't have to go to work, that doesn't have to call anybody, that doesn't have to do anything, it just is. And it can be a very destabilizing space if you are feeling called upon to have activity. But if you are really starting to learn to surrender, you realize the day arises. The day fills itself. You can become a gentle part of an unfolding experience that happens all the time. Someone calls, the newspaper says something, you lie down and take a nap, you make yourself food, you have this life that fills itself, that just brings you what you need day by day by day. And when it doesn't bring you anything, sit still, go for a walk, just be. And just being is, in a certain sense, as beautiful a state of spiritual openness as you can imagine. We are biological, physiological entities. The idea that somehow we can sit in a cave and just be global entities is maybe attractive to some. And there are people for whom I think that's an option. But I have to say, if you are of the world, born into the world, have relationships in the world, feel connected to the world, your job is not to leave the world, it is to be in the world in a state of openness and surrender, available, and with enough wisdom internally to know that listen to the wiser forces of life, and most of those will direct you into your heart. and it will tell you there's only one place you need to go. And if you go inside and you sit there, you will see the day from a different perspective. You will see the day as full of possibility, full of daylight, full of joy. And even when it starts to get dark at night, there's a kind of a still ancient quality of gathering inward, sitting by the fire, sitting with another if you have another, sitting with yourself if you don't have another, and just going, this is what I have, this is what I am, this is who I am, and being deeply open to that. The deeper you go in that cuddling with your own being, the more you discover that it has a doorway to the infinite, that it is vast, that it is infinite, that it is eternal, and that all of these issues will be subsumed in time by the space of no issues. But while you're still here, and while you're dealing with your stuff, do it with a reminder that there is a place to go that will make it possible to be gracious and have a certain elegance of process while you're dealing with your stuff. Don't imagine that life is going to free you of stuff. Don't imagine that life is going to take away your issues. It doesn't take away very much of anything. It gives you perspective in which to observe it. It gives you a larger vision to know, one, that you're not alone. It gives you this sense of a massive embrace of the collective experience of being human. It also tells you, if you have this capacity inside to surrender and to open, that you can share that with people, and that you can be around other people who have issues, and you can be of help. Being of help does not mean you assert yourself into other people's situations. It just means you show up. You can just be there. You can just hold hands. You can just listen. You can make a phone call and say, how are you? There are things you can do to embrace the world without having to direct it, without having to be in charge of it, without having to be, hey, look what I can do. All that goes away. There's this simple sense of service. Be of help. Be of help. And use your ability to go in as an ability to also go out. Share yourself with other beings. Be a source of comfort. Be a source of love. Be a source of kindness. Be an ear. Be compassionate. Be whatever you can do for others. And that really is sort of the spiritual journey, or as Rudy would say, this is your spiritual life. Not the cave. I mean, you can sit and meditate all day long if you want, but at some point you have to deal with the outside. And the wonderful balance of inner and outer, the non-dual sense of being everything and nothing, the idea of being horrible and being wonderful, the idea of being good and bad, the idea of being the totality, that starts to really speak to you, and you stop judging it. You just realize, I am. I am. And this thing that I am is all there is. And each of us is that. Each of us. You are not this, you are not that. You are. Everything that you are is part of the collective. Everything that you are is part of the whole. Once you stop fighting it and thinking, yeah, I should be this or I should be that, you just go. It's one of the amazing things of being old, where you just go, this is what I am. This is who I am. And you don't have to change it to make anybody happy. You don't have to do anything. You just have to learn to accept the reality of what you have been your whole life. What is this being you have always been? It's what you are. It's what you are now. And it's absolutely what needs to be. So, those of you who come here waiting for the magic bullet that will free you from yourself, that will make you something else, better, different, other, more wonderful, I think the only answer I can give you is it will not do that. But it will tell you, if you listen deeply enough, how wonderful you already are. How wonderful you already are. And if you can open to that, if you can accept that, and then accept the wonderfulness of other people. You know, people in their own way are doing, you might say, the best they can do. You know that's not true. They're doing what they do. Bless you. They're doing what they do. But it's not going to help to minimize them, to dismiss them, to hate them, to ignore them. They are part of what is. They're part of what you are. They're part of the totality. Do not judge. You know, you can look clearly. You can go, this is not good behavior. These are problem areas. This needs to be fixed. You just look at it with a certain kind of clarity, but you also understand that in the way that you know when something is going to go away, how much you're going to miss it. You know, if any of you wants to love someone, imagine them not around. Imagine who somebody is and what it would be not to be with them. Then you start to see what it is to care about and love another person. Do it now. Just do it now with everybody. And you realize the beauty and the wonder of each expression of this universal life. Even in the drama that we're facing, even in the greedy and unconscious and dark forces that seem to be unleashed around us, they have never not been here, ever. They're both around us and they're inside us. It doesn't do us well to reject it and to hate it and to create more hostility around it. It just is, I understand. Accept, and do, if you will, get Spike Lee's line in here, the right thing. Do the right thing. You know what it is. You know what it is. The difference between an unconscious life and a spiritual life is doing the right thing. Follow this directive inside you that accepts, that knows, that loves, that cares, that can give, and that can serve, and that can find a way to restore itself regularly by going into the one place you need to go, which is right here. So embrace your issues. They're going to come. When you're having lots of hard issues, ask people to hug you. Call me. I can talk you through it, maybe. But I can at least listen. And I think that if we listen to each other, we reach out to each other, we're kind to each other, boy, does that help make life easier. So there's no cumulative thing to say here other than the fact that don't misunderstand your issues. Don't think they separate you from life or make you somehow different or make you unworthy or make you, imperfect. Your issues are part of the equation. They're part of what you're doing here. They're part of what we're all doing here. And if they rob you of your identity, it's okay. I had this really powerful understanding the other day, and maybe I'll leave you with this. Rudy always said, as you build your spiritual structure in life, and you build this growing, uprising tower of awareness and clarity and perspective, put a stick of dynamite in every floor. And at some point, you will have to blow up the entire structure. And what I understood when we had our identity stolen was, you don't have to blow it up. It's going to blow itself up. Life blows itself up. At some point, all of this stuff gets taken away. Everything gets taken away. And at a certain age, you realize your friends get taken away, your family, things move on, houses, you change. You change in so many ways. It gets taken away. If you've been living in the basement the whole time, you're left in the basement. If you have built a structure that reaches into the clouds, that reaches above the clouds, that reaches into the sunlight, they take the structure away, and what do you discover? That's where you live. You live above the clouds, you live in the infinite awareness of transcendent time and space. Not only are you above the planetary surface. You are up with the clouds and the skies and the galaxies and the universe. You are this vast, infinite being, and getting rid of the structure just leaves you in that exquisite space of awareness and perception that sees it all. And it allows you to love it and be it. And that's, in the end, what and who you are. So, any questions?
Yeah, Bruce, I'm always struck with the balance between detachment and action. So you've reached a pretty good degree of non-attachment, but that didn't stop you making the immigrant movie in order to affect change.
No,
it's not opting out in any
no.
way.
Everyone has a way of looking at this. I looked at the right action. I felt I saw a wrong in the world that I wanted to correct. I could have sat still and said let somebody else do it, because somebody else could and would and in some ways did do it. But I felt I needed to be an active voice in fighting off a dark thing that I thought I could give voice to. So I made this film about, children being taken away from their parents at the border, hoping it would have impact on the election. I, to this day, don't know if it had impact on the election. It didn't proliferate in the way that I wanted or imagined, but it's so funny how life works. I don't understand any of this, really. One person I know who it got to. He wasn't used at the moment, but it was Beto O'Rourke, who's running for president, possibly. And at I was at a funeral of my cousin in Houston, and one of my cousins came up to me, and he's a best friend of Beto O'Rourke, and he said, Beto knows this film. And so we may just have to change the date on the film from vote in November of 2018 to 2020. And so it may have a life way beyond anything I had even imagined. You don't know. You put your little stamp on something, and it has a life perhaps beyond you, or not.
I think there are ripples. A lot of people were affected. They just don't know what to do with it.
It's so interesting, because I made a lot of movies, and one of the great things about movies is that millions upon millions of people see them, but of course you don't get feedback, usually. So I don't know almost anybody who's seen my films. But every so often, you get this tiny little something that your movie changed my life. And that's kind of how it works. All of us may not be making movies, but we touch people. And we may not always get back the information that we have affected a life or made somebody happier or changed a day in someone's life because of how we treated them walking down the street. You don't know, but I will tell you, it's more likely that you will have impacted people in your kindness and never know about it, but have something in you has reached out into the world and made it a better place than if you have used your anger and your hostility and your grievances to make everybody unhappy, which also has impact. So the spiritual perspective allows you, if nothing else, an opportunity to see consequence, to go deep into yourself and understand that you are part of something greater, and that if you feel for that greatness, if you allow for yourself to become one with that greater universe, you will be a better human being. And you might add to that a spiritual human being, but I don't think the word spiritual has to define us. Human being to me is something that is also spiritual. It's a oneness. And we all have a road to haul, and each of us looking for guidance. Some of us are really living life in a very selfish way. The spiritual journey, if you will, is, I keep saying, it's from me to you, from I to thou. The whole journey is to get past your total preoccupation with being you into being us, and being the whole. That's all we're trying. The whole movement is that, into touching others and not just touching ourselves. Anyone else? Okay, we'll stay in touch about the changes that are afoot. I don't know what's going to happen. It's so potential. Things could on so many levels, including not staying in Los Angeles, or being in Los Angeles, being on the East Coast, being north of here. There's so many things that are possible right now, many of them being dictated by my son. Although my son, Joshua, said something really powerful the other day. He said, "Dad, you do what you need to do, I'll do what I need to do." And it was the first time we've ever had that complete clarification. You know, we've always been so close and loving each other, and I really do. And in a way, Blanche and I kind of infantilize our kids because we continue to love them so deeply. But this was a statement that I found so moving, you know, that there's no lack of love. It's just we need to do our thing. And I totally understand that. I just wish I could get past my addiction to my grandchildren. But they are very powerful forces. Anyway, I love you guys too. Don't think of yourself as less loved than my grandchildren. It's just not quite as biological. But I really, really do care. And one way or another, if we were to go anywhere, we would return here. I would hope enough times during the year to be able to sustain you and have classes go on even though we're not here. And I will even say, should Blanche and I not be here, if any of you have ideas of spaces where we could teach, where the class could go on, that would be helpful. If anybody knows of spaces that are usable on Sunday mornings, let us know. Anyway, now I'm probably creating issues for you. I don't mean to do that. I really don't know what's happening, but we will see how it unfolds. Stay in touch, and thank you for at least showing up today, and I love you guys so much.